Exactly 50 years ago, something special started in Bowden, Alberta. Since then, the Alberta Conference Camp meeting has touched many lives. And this year, we'd like to go back to how it all began. With the very first theme we had at Foothills Camp. We invite you to the 2023 Alberta Conference Camp meeting. Come join us to celebrate 50 years of moving by His Spirit.
Good morning, everyone. How are you feeling this morning? Oh, I like that. Wow, fantastic. What day is it today? Yeah, I asked somebody that earlier today, and they were like, "Oh, I don't know. I've lost track of time or days here." I don't know. When you go to sometimes these kinds of events, don't you just sort of like lose track of time and like, you're sort of like, "Oh, I'm away from all the other things at home," and you're just here and just going from session to session or meal or activity or talking with friends, and so time seems like it can just sort of blur, right? But it's Wednesday, and that's we sometimes refer to that as hump day, right? Or the middle of the week, and now everything is downhill from here. So I can't believe that we're already halfway through, and we're rounding the corner to the end of the week. So it seems like it's just flying by. So it's been it's been great to be here. I keep getting reports from back home. It's been triple-digit heat every day in California, and I was just reading something on the news today that there's just like record-breaking heat all over the world. They said China had, came within, a few degrees of their highest ever record heat in China, and in Death Valley in Nevada, they were 2 degrees from being the hottest ever on planet Earth. Breaking that record. So they were getting close, and so my sister in Arizona said, "Yeah, it was only 112 here," because my sister said in California it was only 104. So it's like, so they're like trying to up each other, and I'm saying, man, here it's like what? Well, in Fahrenheit it's like what, in the 70s or high 60s. It feels great here. So I'm glad I'm here and not down there. So yeah, I just wanted to talk a little. Yesterday I had a fun time playing pickleball. And I talked about pickleball yesterday in our exercise talk. And so we were able to play yesterday down at the basketball court from 1 to 2:30. And I just wanted to make that announcement. I know some people already know about it over here, but we're going to be playing down there again today at 1 to 2:30. I wish I could play longer, but I have to speak at 3:30 in the overflow tent. So we're going to go to about 2:30. So if you've never tried it and you want to try it, we had the people you see in the picture there. They were, except for Jenny, Eldon Ramirez, Brother Ramirez's wife, Jenny and I were sort of coaching and teaching all those people there that were totally brand new, never played before. So if you want to try it, come on out this afternoon after lunch and look for us on the basketball court. If you don't, does anybody, the basketball court is, let's see, just down the hill there. So we took the stairs down. Of course, you can drive down if you need to, but yeah, we just took the stairs down there. So we're going to be down there this afternoon after lunch. And I wanted to just thank Ron Schaefer. I don't know, some of you might know him from Bourbon University. He's been there a long time. I don't have a picture of it, but I actually met him 2016 for the first time at Bourbon University. I was doing some talks there, and that's where I first tried pickleball myself. So I credit Bourbon University in Canada for my very first exposure to pickleball, and Ron was the one running it in the gym there. So I contacted him, and when I was coming here, said, "Hey, do we have any equipment that we can borrow?" And he didn't have the right equipment for out there, so he went out and bought 2 brand new nets and 4 paddles for us to use here. And then he dropped them off to me Monday night. And so I got to thank Ron, give him credit for giving us this opportunity to play. So if you want to check it out this afternoon, come on out. So, all right. So today we're going to talk about mind, body health connections. You know, what is it about what we do in our body and how does it affect our mind? But, you know, even when I say that, I want to say that it is not just a one-way street. It's actually a two-way street. So part of what we're going to talk about here in the beginning, and we're going to actually have some little activity, exercise that I want you to do as an audience here, but I want you to think about how mind-body is not just a one-way street. It is a two-way street. What we do in our body affects our mind, and what we think in our mind affects our body. Does that make sense? So it goes both ways. So we're gonna cover that. And you know, one of the things that I speak a lot about to my patients, especially when I'm talking about stress management. Okay, when I'm dealing with stress management classes or working with a patient on stress management, one of the things I really like to touch on is their perception or their attitude. Okay, what do you think are some of the things that when people come to me, they are stressed about? Or what are some of the things that stress you in your daily life? Work? Okay. What else? Money, family? Okay, anything else? Health? Yep. Either your health or somebody else's health, right? Caregivers have a lot of stress, that kind of thing. So, yeah, money, family, work, health. I would say those are probably the four biggies that I would hear a lot from people. And at work, usually it's a coworker or it's a boss, or it could be you're the boss and it's your employees. I remember one guy I was working with for stress. He was like upper middle management, and he worked for the IRS. Anybody know who that is? He worked for the IRS. So he had people he had to report to, and he had people under him who had to report to him. So he was like in a vice. He was like squeezed from both ends. And I remember working with him, and he had to take a month off for stress leave because his health was being impacted. So he had to take a whole month off, and so he met with me every week for stress management. And then after that, when he went back to work, he met with me like once every 2 months or so. And that was, we met over probably 25, 26 years. The first 10 years we met, that was to get him through his work, or maybe the first 12 years, because he started counting down how many months he had to retirement on his computer. And every month he had this counter on his computer, and every month one digit would change. And then I remember when it crossed over to 2 digits, and then eventually 1 digit, and then eventually 0. And after that, I thought, oh, he's retired now. He won't need to see me anymore. But guess what he said after he retired at our last appointment when he was retired? He goes, oh, I got to keep seeing you because now I have other stressors. His wife said that she stresses him out because now he's at home all the time, and he has all this other stuff he has to deal with. So, because I got to keep seeing you. So we've kept seeing each other over the years through the pandemic and all that. So, I see a lot of people for different types of stress-related issues, and the one thing that I always come back to is what are they thinking? What is their perception? What is their attitude? Because when you think about it, in stress, there are a lot of things that are outside of our control, right? That we have no control over. But the one thing we do have control over is what? How we think. How we think or our perception, that we do have our control over. So we're going to talk more about that, and we'll actually do an exercise to help you sort of practice that. Some quotes here that I have. A person's psychological state is a prominent factor in their health. It's not just what we eat and exercise and sleep and all that. It's actually what kind of mental state are you in? Are you in a state of fantastic? I don't know who said that out there, but are you in a state of fantastic all the time? Or are you sort of in a negative mood or a grouchy mood or got up on the wrong side of the bed or something like that? So your psychological state makes a big impact on your overall health. Okay, another quote here. Attitude, social networks, and a healthy diet are woven together in their importance for physical and mental health. Okay, so it's not just any one variable that is the key thing. It's a combination. They're what we call synergistic, right? They all work together. You can't just focus on one and ignore the others. So what I'd like to do is that these factors, what we think, these things also affect our immune system. And so what we do and how we think can have a big impact on that end. So if you have chronic negativity or pessimism, okay, that affects not only your physical, mental, but also how much you care about your health. If you have an attitude of, well, this world is terrible, and why do I even need to take care of my health? That's going to impact what you actually want to do based on what you're thinking. So, I've seen some people. This is not so much health related, but some people will say, well, why do I need to take care of my body? Because I don't want to live this long in this world anyway. This world is terrible. Why do I want to live longer? When you talk about the blue zone and living longer, some people say, well, it's not worth living longer. That's their outlook on life. They only see the negative in this world. They don't see the good things in the world or the positive things. So that also affects how we do that. Attitudes. Back here, I just jumped ahead too far. Attitudes such as perseverance under stress. Do you know what the other word we call that? That it begins with R? Begins with R. Perseverance under stress. Somebody who's faced a lot of challenges in life, but they still seem to be able to roll with it and go with it. Oh, I thought resilience. Yes, resilience. One of my coworkers, faculty at Loma Linda, she's written a book about resilience and how that actually begins in childhood. How you train your kids, how you train you raise up your kids, can teach them valuable lessons about resilience as they get older. And she actually got these lessons from studying centenarians. She's at Loma Linda, so she has access to the Blue Zone subjects, people who live to be 100 or more. So she's done a lot of interviews and studies on these centenarians and asked them, hey, what is it that made you resilient? So perseverance under stress, resilience, optimism, and faith, those are things that can help you to have better health in the long run. So if I recall, I haven't read her book. I bought her book, but I haven't read it yet. But I know just from the Blue Zones and all of that, when you train kids to be optimistic versus pessimistic. Remember last night, Brother Eldon's talk about all he was trying out for all those sports, the different sports teams. I was thinking, wow, man, he's really persevering. He's trying out at all these things. I would have probably given up a long time ago. But, how you encourage kids and speak to them and help them to see, hey, losing is not the worst thing in the world, and how you can help them to develop that positive attitude can help them be more resilient when life is throwing, mud and cannonballs at them. So it really makes a difference how we model that and express that to our kids. So faith, perseverance, optimism, these are linked to, there's a lot of things that you can look and show research on this as far as evidence, but they show that it's, it can deal with stress-related conditions, heart disease, because heart disease, high blood pressure, infection, these are all, again, related to what? What is the root cause? I talked about it yesterday. What are the two root causes of chronic disease? Inflammation and insulin resistance. So when you are under a lot of stress and you're thinking negatively, you're going to trigger inflammatory responses in your body. Because remember, there's the whole fight or flight. I think we talked about it a little bit yesterday. When you think something and you think, uh-oh, I'm in danger, your body's automatic response is to do what? Fight or flee. Okay, we call that the fight or flight, or we call that the stress response. So when you're ready to fight or flee, if you're getting ready to fight, what does your body then have to do in order to get ready to fight? More adrenaline, and adrenaline and cortisol help you to do what? What specific changes in your body have to happen when you're getting ready to fight a threat that is coming to you? What things do you think you might need in order to be successful in coming out on the top end of that kind of encounter? Need more energy, exactly. So you need more energy. So guess what? Your liver will pump out more glucose because it says, we need more fuel to the muscles because we need to fight. We need to be ready to either fight or run. So more energy. What else? Anybody else have any ideas what changes in your body have to happen? What's that? Heart rate. Okay, yes. Your heart rate will increase. Why will your heart rate increase? Getting more blood. I think I heard it too. More blood to the system because you need more fuel and oxygen, glucose and oxygen in the muscles to be able to be super strong, all right? Other things that will happen, for example, your eyes will tend to dilate. They'll open wider. Why do you think they'll open wider? So you can see better, because it lets more light in. So it lets more light in so you can see better, or especially if it's at night. Your reaction time is quicker. You'll be able to move more quickly. The blood in the surface of your body, however, the vessels in your body, the surface of your skin, will actually constrict, and it will drive the blood deeper. Why do you think that will happen? Why do you think the body, that when they say, oh, they're white as a ghost, that's not just to show that you're scared, but why does the body do that? Constrict the surface blood vessels, driving the blood deeper into the body. Why do you think that is? Okay, so maybe go to the organs or the muscles more. There's another self-preservation thing. What if you're facing a mountain lion or somebody with a knife, and then the mountain lion claws you or the knife cuts you? If the blood is not, if the blood has been shunted inward, you're not going to bleed out as fast, right? Because it's not there, it's deeper in. So it's a self-preservation mechanism. Your digestion of food stops. Why do you think digestion of food stops under fight or flight? That's right. The energy goes where it's needed. Digestion requires a lot of blood. So right now, digesting that meal is not the most important thing when you're about ready to be attacked by a mountain lion, okay? You need your blood to your muscles so you can either run or fight. So your digestion stops. So there's a lot of other things that happen in our body, but you can see all these things then are supposed to happen when we are under fight or flight. If we're in danger, God created us a way to increase our chance of survival, whether it's an accident like an earthquake or a tornado or some storm or a shipwreck or a car wreck. God designed the fight or flight response as a good thing in our body. But that's only for emergency purposes, right? It's really only supposed to be meant for emergency. I'm trying to see where there's a fire alarm in here, but if you kept pulling the fire alarm every hour and the alarm kept going off, it's going to drive everybody crazy because there's no fire in here. So, and that's unfortunately what people do in their body, is if they're always triggering that fight or flight response, you're marshaling all the resources, all the emergency, the fire department, the police, the ambulance people. You're getting all those systems up and running when there's no emergency. So pretty soon, if you've, for the 100th time, you pulled the fire alarm in here, what do you think the local fire department's going to say? Yeah, there's that Foothills camp again. This is the 100th time. It's just a false alarm. We're not going to show up. And then at 101st time, when there's really a fire in here, we pull the alarm. What's going to happen? They're not going to show up. All right? And then it's going to be bigger trouble. So that's the way, the same thing with the body. When you keep triggering the fight or flight response all the time, then the body starts to suffer because it's not supposed to have all those chemicals, adrenaline, cortisol. It's not supposed to have all those chemicals in our bodies all the time. And the system is not supposed to be always geared up all the time. I don't know if you've seen this comic book character. It's been in the movies, but the Hulk. Do you know who the Hulk is? Your kids probably know, grandkids probably know. He's a scientist he's a scientist normally, but when he's under stress, right? When something scary or frightening or threatening happens to him, what happens to him? He turns into the Hulk, and when he's the Hulk, he's like a big green Samson, right? He's indestructible. Nothing can kill him. And so, but that's under stress. So that's what our bodies pretty much do. We turn into a strong green Samson, and we're super strong, but we're not supposed to be in that shape, that form all the time. So when you have a negative attitude or a pessimistic attitude all the time, you get up in the morning and you look outside and you think something negative. Oh, the sprinklers got the newspaper wet. Or, oh, somebody was too loud outside. Or, oh, I forgot to put out the trash can and now I'm going to miss the trash pickup. Or whatever. You just think of any negative things in your head. You have that kind of negative attitude. What happens to the fight or flight? You pull that alarm. You hit that alarm. You set it off. Now, it might not be a big alarm, but you do set it off. And then if you go throughout the day with a negative attitude and you're thinking, this and that and just a negative train of thought, all throughout the day, you're hitting that alarm. One time I was teaching in a stress class, and I said, Okay, what happens if you were getting up in the morning, your alarm goes off, and let's say you need an alarm because you're a deep sleeper or you stay up late, so the alarm goes off in the morning, like that, and you're sleeping and all of a sudden, like that. I don't know, does anybody wake up like that? Their alarm just jars them awake, all right? So then you wake up, you get jarred, what have you just done? Boom, hit the fight or flight alarm, okay? Now you hit the snooze button, you go back to sleep again, pretty soon you oversleep, and then you wake up and you look at your watch and you're like already 30 minutes late. Again, boom, your fight or flight response just kicked in. So you're rushing, getting ready for work, you're getting dressed, you're trying to drink your orange juice at the same time, and all of a sudden you spill some on your shirt. You know, and you're, oh man, so then you change again, and you finally get downstairs, and the kids are arguing, and they're having trouble, and the dog got out of the yard and is running loose in the neighborhood, you know, and so you're like hit the alarm all morning. You finally get into the car, and you turn on the car, and you look at the gas gauge, and it's on E. Somebody used it and didn't tell you to, you know, it was on E. You know, and then you get, you know, you fill up, you get on the freeway, now you're really late, you're stuck in traffic, and it's all the way to work. You get to work, and your boss is standing there looking at his watch, and you know, and so you all through work, you're hitting the alarm, you finally get home, and you find out, oh man, the refrigerator, something happened, the power went out, it defrosted, there's a big lake in my kitchen. You know, and then finally get that fixed. You find out that your kid got in trouble in school, and you have to go to parent-teacher conference the next day. Finally, you know, dishes are done, your dinner's done. You say, oh man, what a day. I'm just gonna go and watch some TV. And you turn on TV, and you're not really controlling anything, and you happen to watch this scary movie. I hate scary movies, so I never watch them. But let's say you watch something sort of scary, and you know, even though you like scary movies, let's say, and you're watching it, your fight or flight's still going off. And then you fall asleep in the chair, and while you're sleeping, you have a nightmare about what you just watched. So even while you're sleeping, what are you doing to your fight or flight? And then you wake up and it goes all over again. Now, I see some people smiling, and I hope I'm not too close to home to your life. But I remember one patient, she said to me afterwards, after class, she goes, man, do you have a camera in my house? That sounds exactly like my life. I'm like, oh my word, no wonder you were here. So, but does that sound familiar with some people that when they talk to you, you get together, like, man, my life is just one train wreck after another. And you know, here's the thing. Some of that is out of your control, right? The refrigerator melting down, that's out of your control. You know, power went out, whatever. You know, traffic on the freeway, that's out of your control. And yet, people have a negative attitude, a negative perception against those things, and so they set off the fight or flight response. So part of the trick is to know what are the things that you have control over that you should really be concerned about, and what are things that you have no control over. So why do you hit the fight or flight alarm button when you have no control over it anyway, right? Does that make sense? And yet it's very easy to do that because our attitudes were trained even from a very early age, okay? You may not know this, but maybe your parents, maybe other adults in your life, they might have started forming your thought patterns from that very early on, and then it just continued and just sort of built and built a bit. The good news is, no matter what it is, if you feel that you have a negative attitude and you have a hard time thinking that, there are ways to change that, and you can change to being from a pessimistic person to an optimistic person, okay? So there is hope on that. We'll talk about that a little bit later in this talk here about how to do that. But showing how a lot of these things, how you think in your mind, affect the rest of your body. Because, you know, high blood pressure, right? Remember, when fight or flight kicks off, what happens? Your heart's pumping faster and all of this kind of thing. So you're supposed to have high blood pressure when you're in the fight or flight. But the problem is when you're doing it all the time, then that puts a lot of stress on the system that it wasn't meant to handle. Okay, so that's why then we have all these other diseases. Okay? Some other things that if you do have a positive attitude, a healthy, optimistic outlook, you actually do the opposite then, right? You heal faster from wounds. You recover from illness better. If you do get sick, your sickness is a lot shorter, okay? It's not as long. So a positive attitude can help you on the opposite side of things to help you recover and have better health overall, okay? A steady state of worry, grief, hostility, unforgiveness Hopelessness and depression increases the risk of infection. Again, because all those kinds of feelings and emotions and thought patterns, they all increase inflammation in the body through triggering the fight or flight response. Okay? Inflammatory conditions, sickness, and slower recovery from illness. So this has been well documented. I mean, there's no question at all how the mind, how your thought affects your health. Okay? Always, and now if you're going to get treated, and we always have to say this, sort of like an exercise, we sometimes say, always check with your doctor. If somebody does have some serious issues, psychological or cognitive issues, you always want to check with your doctor to see if there's other things going on. Unfortunately, we had some issues in our family, our immediate family, with some depression and all. And so you want to get the help that you need and to see if there's any underlying medical cause in that. But, it's always a good thing to do. So many factors contribute to our disease. It's not just, of course, our mind. We know that happy people get sick, right? I mean, that's a fact. Yesterday, we were talking about risk, right? Risk factor. So same thing here. You can do everything perfectly, but it doesn't guarantee that you're not going to get sick. It's just going to reduce your risk and lower your risk of getting sick. But it does happen. But if you are a happy person that does get sick, like we said earlier, it can still reduce and make that sickness less severe and shorter. So you're still going to be better off in the end if you still try to cultivate a positive attitude. Trusting positive mindset is as important to good health and recovery from sickness as known factors such as exercise and diet. So we tend to talk a lot about exercise and diet, but if you think about the New Start acronym, NEWSTART, does anybody know all those letters, what they all stand for? New Start's been around? Okay. Yeah, so we tend to focus a lot on the N and the E and some of those, but the T is the last letter in that New Start is what? Trusting God. That's right. So trusting God. So that is a foundational aspect to all of those factors besides the other things that we typically will talk about quite a bit on. Now, do you know somebody who is what we call a worrywart? Or are you yourself a worrywart? Are you always worrying about something? I had my mother-in-law. I've talked about her before, so it's okay. It's common knowledge. But when I first met her, I met my mother-in-law when I came to California, because I came from Michigan to California, and then I met my future wife through Sabbath school. Okay, Japanese Sabbath school. I was going to the Japanese Sabbath school and seeing some student missionary friends of mine from Japan. And then that's where I met my wife. And then eventually I met her parents. And her mom was interesting because she was always worrying about something, it seemed like. I had never met somebody who worried so much. And I was like, wow, man, that's okay. But she lived in Sacramento. We lived in Loma Linda. That's an 8-hour drive. So we didn't see them a whole lot until they retired. The dad retired. He was a dentist up there. He retired, and then they moved down to Upland, which is about 45 minutes or 30 minutes from Loma Linda. So we saw them a lot more then. And it was interesting that I noticed her that she was always worrying about something, but then when we had our daughter, because my sister-in-law, her other daughter, doesn't have any kids, so when we had our daughter, she's like the only grandchild in my wife's side of the family, and something about having the granddaughter started to melt or remove her worrywart. She started to change. It was really interesting to see that how a grandchild changed her attitude, changed her outlook, and it was really amazing to see that. So yes, you can remove worrywarts and change a lot of these things when you think, oh man, this is the way I've been forever. How can that person change, or how can I change? It is possible to change your mindset. So we're going to cover some suggestions and some tips about how you can do that to start being more positive. And by the way, if you have a spouse here and you're saying, yeah, this is what you need to really listen to, don't do that because it probably doesn't help. Just sort of keep it to yourself. Hopefully people who, are working on this on their own, they'll see the changes and they'll be able to apply that more to themselves. But we'll talk about some tips here. Number 1, activate your smile. Do your, smile often. Some people say, well, I don't feel like smiling. I'm not really feeling happy. Well, guess what? Studies have shown if you smile, even though you don't feel it inside of you, that actually will change your feeling. So you don't have to wait to feel good to smile. Now, I don't know if you knew this, but I was telling somebody this yesterday after my talk yesterday, that as speakers up here, I don't know if, I'm sure many of you have spoken up front or all, but if you've ever done any kind of speaking, people, as a speaker, at least for me, I like to scan the audience and look at people. Now, it's really bright up here, so I can't see all, really well all the faces. But we typically, as speaker, will scan the audience. And what we'll do a lot of times is we will find people in the audience that are either smiling or nodding their head or really looking at you intently. But usually it's smiling and laughing. If I see people smiling and laughing, I tend to go to them throughout my talks and sort of come back to them. Because guess what that does to me when I see somebody smiling or laughing? And when I say laughing, they're not laughing at me like, oh, is there something wrong? Did I forget to zip something? No, I'm not talking about that. But see, now you're laughing now. But see, when I look at you and you're laughing, I know you're laughing at the right time. So guess what that does to a speaker? What does that effect have on a speaker? It boosts their spirits, right? Isn't that right, President Jeff there? I know he speaks a lot. So yeah, it boosts our spirit. It helps encourage us. If we don't see anybody smiling or laughing, or they're just sitting there, or they're sleeping, or they're whatever, guess what that does to us? Like, oh man, it's discouraging. So when you are smiling, even if you may not feel it yourself, number one, you're going to help other people around you to feel better, okay? And number two, it's going to make you feel better as well. There's something about it, something about activating those muscles that seems to trigger something in our body physiologically to help us start to feel better, to reduce that fight or flight response. So practice smiling. Some of you may be hard, but just, when I'm walking here from the lodge here or something, I try to look at people and I smile and say good morning or something like that. So practice smiling as much as you can, because it's definitely something you can intentionally do without too much effort. Smiling not only lowers your stress and improves your outlook, it's an inexpensive way to improve your look. So practice smiling as much as you can. Number two, express gratitude, all right? I like this saying here. I like to talk about attitude of gratitude. Have you heard that saying before? Attitude of gratitude? Yeah. So how do you develop an attitude of gratitude? Is that just something you're born with and you just sort of, I have an attitude of gratitude. Is that something you're just born with? I don't know. I think some people seem to be naturally grateful, but I think overall, especially in this day and age when we're inundated by so much negativity, that we need to actively cultivate an attitude of gratitude. And that text there, 1 Thessalonians 5:18, anybody know what that says? In all give. Now, does it say in the good things give thanks? Does it say in most things give thanks? No, it says all things. Well, what does all mean? Everything, yeah, everything. That means the good and the bad. Does that mean, oh man, I should be thankful for bad things that happen to me? Does that seem sort of, what's that? It's smart. It's okay. Well, so it's not saying that you should be thankful for those bad things that happen to you, but in the midst of those bad things that happen to you, you can look, they say the silver lining, or you can look for something to be grateful for. Let me give you an example. My wife and daughter were driving on the freeway back in California. I wasn't home. I think I was away somewhere else, speaking at a meeting or something. And then I get this text message saying, oh, we had a flat tire on the freeway. You know how scary that is, right, on the freeway when you get a flat tire. So my first thing was, oh, are you guys okay? Were you able to get off the freeway? And they said, yeah, we were able to pull off. Now, my wife and daughter, I taught my daughter how to change a tire, but she doesn't like to do it. And my wife, well, I didn't try to teach her. So I don't think she knows how to do it. She might, but she, every time we have had a flat, I've always been there to do it. So we have AAA, right? Anybody, you guys have AAA up here or something like that? Thank goodness for AAA, right? So we had AAA. So I said, well, did you call AAA? She goes, oh yeah, we called AAA, and they came out and they changed the tire, and then she was on her way. So we weren't thankful that they had a flat, right? But how were we grateful for? What were we grateful for? That they were able to pull off safely, that they had AAA, that there was no accident, and all this kind of thing. So even in that situation, even though it's a negative situation, you can still be grateful and thankful that, you got to look for those things sometimes instead of saying, oh man, why did I get a flat and I'm late and it's hot and da-da-da. That's what some people will do. They'll just think of all the negatives instead of thinking about the positives. So, that's what I believe 1 Thessalonians 5:18 is talking about, okay? So developing that attitude of gratitude is a skill that you have to do, and it helps to provide a buffer against a lot of the negative things that happen to us. So it's something that you wanted to develop. So here's the thing I'm going to have you guys practice right now. Find a partner, or you can get into threes. So find a partner, and then I want you to think about or come up with something that happened yesterday, because hopefully nothing negative happened today. Think of something that happened yesterday that wasn't a fun thing, maybe quote unquote a negative thing that happened yesterday, and then think about it again and say, how could I rethink of that situation into a positive? What could I see positive about that? Okay, so I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do that. So find somebody near you and then just share with them what negative thing happened yesterday and how can you reframe that into a positive. And if some of you think, well, nothing negative happened to me yesterday, maybe you're at that level of everything is positive and you're grateful for. And then I don't know if we have a microphone. We have a roving mic? Somewhere? Yeah, I want to try to maybe get a couple of sharing. Yeah, thanks. I have one more minute. And then we're going to go around with the mic and have a few of you share to see how that went. Okay, wow, I like hearing the little buzz in the room. I'm sorry to cut it short. It's been about 2 minutes. We have somebody here with a mic. If you or your partner had a really good example of a negative turn to a positive, raise your hand, because I'd like you to share that with the rest of us. So anybody have something that they would share that their partner shared with them? Something negative happened yesterday, and now they were able to rethink it as a positive. Anybody? Okay, right up here. There's a lady up here. Okay, he's coming with a mic. So, yeah, she's right there. Yeah. They're turning it on. It's okay. Here's an example. All right, no problem. So we have a negative thing right here. The mic is not working, but how can we reframe that as a positive? We have a backup. So we're thankful for technology, and we have crews that are working here and know what to do. So,
and that gives me time to reassort the words I'm going to say.
Okay.
I basically have issues with my health, and I've been having low blood pressure, which is extremely low, and then now I have extremely high blood pressure, so it's going back and forth. But then I realized, and I know that God is there for me, and all I got to do is turn to Him, because He knows what I'm going through. And I also thought about what did I do that maybe affected it, and now I know what I got to do to help it.
Okay, good. So instead of just getting worried and more stressed out about it, you say, hey, I'm going to trust in God, and then that allows you to start thinking about things that you need to do and all that. So great example. Yeah, we talked earlier, so thank you for sharing. Anybody else? Oh, a hand over here.
For a couple of days now, I don't have hot water in my trailer. So,
You don't have, you said hot water?
yes.
Okay.
So, it is the coldest shower I've ever taken.
Uh-huh.
So I thought of how could that be positive?
Uh-huh.
I thought of the fact that I'm grateful that I have water.
All right. And I'm going to add to that in tomorrow's talk. I think it's tomorrow, Friday. Yes, tomorrow's talk. I think I have a slide or two about how taking a cold bath improves your immune system. So there you go. That's another thing. See, so you say, oh, my immune system is being boosted with this cold shower. All right, thanks for sharing. Anybody else? One more. Let's see. Oh, over here. Okay.
This didn't happen yesterday. It happened a couple of years ago.
Okay.
The doctor told me my eyes are too bad. I can't give you permission to have driver's license. So they gave me a temporary card that I can show who I am, at least, if they ask me. Anyhow, I sold my car right away so I wouldn't be tempted.
Oh, that's good move.
And then, it says in the Bible, ask and you shall receive.
Uh-huh.
Well, I never used to like to ask people to help, but now I have to ask if I want something, and people reciprocate. Yeah, so I'm blessed.
Oh, good. All right. Yeah, so he turned a negative into a positive and looked at it that, hey, now you have friends helping, and and I'm sure there's many people that want to help back, because I'm sure you probably helped a lot of people before. Now it's their turn to pay it back, right? So that's great. Thank you for sharing. How was it? Let me ask you this. Was it hard for some of you or your partner to take a negative and change it in their head and think of the positives from that negative? Did you find anybody had a hard time doing that? No? Yes? Or maybe you don't want to say? I mean, I've had patients who said, man, I can't do that. It's really difficult. And why do you think it's difficult for them? Because they've been so entrenched in thinking about the negative all the time, that has become the automatic response. They see something, boom, they think negative right away. Now, that's a response because when we are in our brains, this is one end of a neuron, this is the other end. So if you think of it this way, this is what a neuron looks like. There's a bulb end on this end, and there's like a cup end on this end. This cup end is sort of like a receiver dish, a radar dish, okay? A radio dish. This end here is a transmitter. So in this end here, there are little balls of different hormones and chemicals that are released here, and they travel across this space here, and they go to the receiver dish here. So this is what a neuron is like they're all connected like this. And sometimes they're far apart, sometimes they're closer together. If you want to develop a habit, you keep doing the same pattern over and over and over again, and guess what physically happens to those neurons? They get closer and closer and closer. So when they get closer and closer and closer, what does that mean to the signal for that certain behavior or action? It gets more automatic and it gets faster. Because in this part of the neuron, the main part here, this is where the electric current is, and then for this part here, this is the chemical section. So this is electricity and then chemical going across this gap. So when you have the neurons going closer and closer until you're almost touching, that transmission of that signal goes even faster and faster, versus if it's this far, it takes longer to travel. That's not a habit yet. Does that make sense? So when you do something over and over and over and over again, you're developing pathways, connections, trails in your brain for certain things. And so if somebody's been negative for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, guess what? Their pathways in their brain for thinking negative are almost going to be touching, okay? So it's not going to change overnight. It's not going to all of a sudden, I'm going to start thinking positive, and all of a sudden, boom, it's going to go far apart again. No, it's going to take a while, and in fact, sometimes you can't reverse it and remove it this way, but what you can do is, if this is the pathway, let's say this is the pathway for negative thinking, You may not be able to separate those neurons as far apart as you'd like, but what you can do is create a new pathway over here. They're still far apart, but if you start thinking positive and doing that on a regular basis, pretty soon that will get closer and closer, and you'll basically be rediverting the river and going to this new pathway. That's how you basically change habits. And, like with smoking, that's what we have to do. I was just talking to a patient yesterday on Zoom. I have a new smoking patient, and he's been smoking for like 50 years. Now he has cancer. He's on chemotherapy. The doctor said, you need to quit smoking yesterday. And he's this, old guy, and he's like, I could tell. He goes, I'm on the patches. He's on the medication, bupropion, and he goes, nothing's working. See, in his mind, none of this stuff is working because he's been smoking so long. But then in talking with him yesterday, he said, yeah, I said, so what do you normally smoke? Oh, a pack a day. He said, well, how much did you smoke this past week? Oh, I did a pack the whole week. I'm like, oh, one pack a week? That's like 4 or 5 cigarettes a day. And I said, well, what happened? So we talked about that. So even though in his mind, he thinks the patches and the drug isn't working, it's actually working, but he just doesn't want to think that way because he's been smoking for so long. So in his mind, he doesn't want it to work in a sense, right? Because this is what he's been doing. So for him, his smoking pattern is like this, literally touching. And not only that, it's not only thinking, it has nicotine in it, right? Nicotine is even making it even a stronger pathway, but now we're on the quest to develop a new pathway, a new habit, a new behavior, and that's going to take a while. It's going to take some effort, some time, but I believe it can be done because I've seen it done. So you don't have nicotine, fortunately, in your system dealing with this kind of thing, but you do need to create a new pathway. So that's why doing this kind of exercise or activity, you have to be intentional about it all the time. When something happens to you and your first thought is negative, you want to catch yourself, say, whoa, wait a second. Okay, well, how can I think of that in a new and positive way? Have 1 Thessalonians 5:18 all over your house, on your phone, whatever. But just say, this is a biblical principle. In all things, give thanks. It doesn't mean to be thankful for the bad thing that happened to me, but in all things, give thanks. I mean, I had a lot of friends who had flight delays coming here, okay? Or they missed their flight, or their flight got canceled, okay? How can you be thankful about that? You'll never know. Maybe, I don't want to be morbid about it, but I've read stories where somebody missed a flight, and then they had to take a next flight, and that flight ended up having a problem or a crash or something, and if they had been on that flight, they would have, been in the crash. So, is that why maybe, I don't know. We will never know until we get to heaven, right? When we look back and say, oh, that's why, I missed the whatever, the deadline or whatever. We don't know because we don't see everything, okay? So practice developing that attitude of gratitude. Okay, number 3, focus on the positive. That's sort of similar to practicing an attitude of gratitude. And I want to give you an example here. Again, this is sort of similar to what we just were doing. Let's say you're driving your car. Okay, you're driving your car and you're late for an appointment. Okay, and have you ever been on a street where you're driving your car, not the freeway, but you're like on a side street or a surface street. You're driving your car, you're late for an appointment, and the car in front of you is going below the speed limit. Okay, some of you have been in that situation. So if you're in that situation, where is your car in relation to their car? A lot of times. You're right on their bumper, right? You're like, come on. So, you're not even going the speed limit. Pick it up. So you're right on their bumper. And then all of a sudden, no stoplight, no stop sign, nothing. All of a sudden, you see this. Their brake lights go on, and you're almost like, jam on your brakes, and you almost rear end them. What are you feeling right at that moment? Angry. Yeah. Stressed. Yeah, you're like, oh my, I almost had an accident. And then you're looking at that person there, and let's say it's somebody you can barely see their head over the seat. They're driving like this. And then you see them, and you're like, what in the world? Why did they, what were they thinking? You're just angry at them, right? You want to strangle them. Then all of a sudden, so can you picture that in your mind? Hopefully nobody, or everybody take a deep breath, because I think I can feel some people getting stressed already because they're imagining that. But you see that, and then all of a sudden, you see in front of her car, the other car, you see a kid running into the street getting a ball. Okay? And then they run back and cross. Then you realize, oh man, they stopped because that kid ran in the street in front of them. And had they kept going, or they were going faster, or they weren't paying attention, they might have hit that kid. okay? Maybe it's a neighbor kid. Maybe it's somebody you know. Maybe it's a family member, let's say, just to make it even tougher. And then all of a sudden, from the first moment you're angry and you want to strangle that person to you see that kid running across the street, all of a sudden, what happens in you? What changes in your feelings towards that driver? One moment, yeah, I think I heard it, grateful, right? You're grateful that they weren't speeding, that they were able to stop in time. So one moment you were ready to strangle them, the next moment you're ready to donate your kidney to them, okay? Or maybe not quite that, but nobody would want my kidneys because I've had 3 kidney stones already, so they wouldn't want mine. But you see what I'm saying? It can change in an instant what you focus on. The negative of this person was driving slow to, hey, this person was driving safe and they avoided an accident. Does that make sense? I mean, boom, just like that. So focusing on the positive is something that you can do, but again, it takes intention. It takes being specific about it. I like this quote here by Eleanor Roosevelt. Eleanor Roosevelt was the wife of one of our presidents, early presidents, Franklin Roosevelt. But she said this: "No one can make you feel what? Inferior without whose consent? Your consent." All right? Now, I don't know about Canada, but in the U.S., it seems like everybody, or not everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, a lot of people have a victim mentality. They want to blame, the president on down to the postman, okay? It's everybody's fault, somebody else's fault, right? It's their fault, blah, 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 whatever. It's not my fault. But what is she saying here? No one can make you feel inferior. And I actually changed that. You can say, no one can make you feel stressed. No one can make you feel, and you can put in whatever word you want there, negative word you want there, but no one can make you feel blank without your consent. So if I'm blaming my boss for me being stressed out and all this, really, it's not my boss or my dean or whoever's that's doing that to me. It's who? It's me. Now, I've had patients who've outright just disagreed with me and said, no, that's not true. If my 40-year-old son would get his butt off the couch and get a job and start working, then things would be better. Probably, but in the end, no matter what other people do, how you feel is really all up to what you think and do up in here. So I really believe that, and if you have a hard time believing this and accepting this, that might be the root of the problem of why it might be hard for you to develop positive attitudes and to focus on the positive and have an attitude of gratitude, because you're expecting other people to make you feel better and feel positive. It's only up to us. What we think about in here, no matter what other people think about us, we can control what happens in here. There was an old movie once, and it was about a guy in an insane asylum who was sort of a rebel rouser, okay? And it had a very famous actor. I actually never saw the full movie. I just know about it because it's a famous movie, but it's an old one. It had Jack Nicholson in it. Anybody know what the name of that movie was or is? Yeah, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, okay? So in that movie, he's like in this insane asylum, and he's sort of like, he adds color to their life, right? He's just, he gets them into trouble. They're doing all kinds of crazy things. So in the end of the movie, they do a procedure on him that totally changes him. And I use that example because this is the only procedure I know in the world that if you get this procedure done, you will never be stressed ever again. Never. Nothing will stress you out. Somebody can come up to your face and call you every name in the book and talk about your mother, and you will just stand there and your emotions, and you will be totally calm. You will never be stressed. Does that sound like a miracle procedure? You could get all these stack of bills when you get home, and you'll look at that and say, oh, okay. Not a degree of stress at all. Anybody want that procedure? Well, if you've seen the movie, you know what the procedure was, right? What was the procedure? A what? A lobotomy, frontal lobotomy. They basically went inside, usually through the nose, go inside and they sever or they scramble the front part of your brain, okay? Now, you can still function. I guess this was a common procedure back in, the 1800s for, in the insane asylum, crazy people. They would disconnect that part of the brain because you can still do everything else, right? But what is the importance of the front part of the brain? This is where what resides? This is critical thinking. This is our consciousness, our morality, our decision making, right and wrong, emotions, reasoning. Yeah, it's all here. Everything else in the part of the brain is all about bodily function, autonomic, all that. But this is the part that separates us from animals. Okay? When people drink alcohol, where does that impact first? Their ability to walk? No. If it impacts the frontal lobe. So that, now I don't drink, obviously, of course, but I remember my wife and I went to a heart association function, a dinner, and there was 10 people, 5 couples around the table. And everybody were, I'm an extrovert, right? So I'm talking to people and, but I could tell people were sort of nervous. They were like, not making eye contact. And my wife was nervous too because she hates meeting new people that she doesn't know. But I'm the only one trying to talk. And, so people are sort of just a little quiet and all. Then they came out and started passing around the alcohol. I don't know what it was, wine, champagne, something. I guess it was wine. Because it's a heart association thing. So, they're trying to promote drinking wine, which we did talk about yesterday. So they're passing around the wine. And then all of a sudden, they're just drinking that first glass. And guess what I noticed? All of a sudden, people are like talking and laughing and, acting like they were old college buddies. And I looked at my wife and said, no wonder people drink in social interactions, because if they're nervous, when they drink, it impacts the front part of their brain. Their inhibitions go down. They're not so worried about what other people might be thinking, and they're a little loose and calm. And now they can socialize. I don't think Adventists, we don't need alcohol, right? We can be crazy without alcohol. And so, so we're just crazy on life, I call it, right? So, but that's where alcohol impacts. So if you don't want, this is where your emotions are. So it's here where, whether it's alcohol, drugs, or frontal lobotomy, that those things can definitely impact this. And if you do that, you won't get stressed. Now, is that an ideal way to deal with stress? No, of course not. So this is why when you're talking about attitude of gratitude and being positive, it has to be up here in the front. It is a choice that you have to literally make all the time. So in order to help you to do that, this is what I recommend to patients who have trouble doing that. Because, there's a lot of people that, again, we're so inundated with negativity that it's hard for them to think about the positive. So I tell them, keep what we call a positivity journal, okay? So get a journal, and then at the end of every day, think of 3 things that happened to you that day. So like tonight, for example, think of 3 things that happened today that you are thankful for, that was a positive, that you're grateful, and write it down. Now, I've had people tell me when they started this, they said the first week, they couldn't think of anything. I'm like, what? Really? It was just, their minds were just so stuck on the negativity track, right? And it really was really hard for them to think of even one thing positive. And by the way, when I say think of something positive, I don't, we should be thankful for, we pray about it like, thankful for life, thankful for waking me up and all that. So, and that's good. But when I'm talking about this, I want you to think of something positive that is specific to that day, that's unique to that day. Yeah, we're thankful for life. We're thankful for good food, for shelter, for family and friends. Yes, we're thankful for that, but I want you to be really specific about something that happened to you that day. Thankful that my cousin was able to take me to the airport today. Nobody else could, but my cousin was able to. See, that's something really specific to that day. Does that make sense? So don't just be thankful, I'm thankful for the sun and for air, and, yes, we're thankful for that, okay? By the time you do this for 1 month, every night, 3 things positive, specific to that day. You do that, I can guarantee you will have a much more positive outlook on life, and you will be having a much more attitude of gratitude when you're dealing with life, okay? So I would challenge you to do that. If you've never done that before, I challenge you to do that for this month, or it's almost the end of July, so do it for August or whatever. But then email me, okay? I'd like to hear from you a month later and say, hey, you know what? I tried this positivity journal, and it really helped me change my outlook on life. So when something happened to me, when somebody banged into my car in the parking lot, with their door, instead of being angry all of a sudden, however, whatever reaction that was more positive that happened in that situation, okay? So I'd be curious to see how that works, just to test the point. So positivity journal, okay? Number 4, forgive. We know all about forgiveness. There's probably a lot of sermons that you've heard about the power of forgiveness, but forgiveness can also be a very powerful medicine for your physical health, to be in that kind of forgiving attitude. Because I think, was it last night that we heard about it, that the more we appreciate how much God forgave us, it's easier for us to forgive others, right? The more we really understand how much He loves us, even though we have all our faults and foibles, how much He's forgiven us, we should then be that much forgiving or more to other people because of that understanding and that appreciation and gratefulness for what God has done to us. That has been shown to have a very powerful impact on our health. I mentioned earlier that at our school we've been doing research on religion and spirituality and health. Out at Duke, the same thing. They have a whole center on spirituality and health. So they've looked at aspects like forgiveness and the power of forgiveness and how it impacts your health. Okay, so if you want the reference to that, just email me. I'll be happy to send you the studies on that. But very, very powerful. Now here's another one. Don't be so hard on yourself when you make mistakes. Okay, people tend to dwell on their mistakes, and then it gets them to be negative, and they only can focus on the mistakes. They look at mistakes as a sign of failure or weakness. Okay, don't focus on. I want you to change your thinking about mistakes and look at it as a positive thing. Whoa, how could a mistake be a positive thing? When you look at all successful people in life, did they never make any mistakes when they were successful? To be successful? Thomas Edison, Babe Ruth. I have a thing here that I found, about successful people. I have this thing here. Michael Jordan. Anybody know who Michael Jordan is? Okay. One of the greatest basketball players of all time, probably the greatest, But here's what he said. I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. You think he focused on that? I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to hit the game-winning shot, and he missed. I failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. See, he doesn't look at all those mistakes as, oh man, I'm bad, I'm terrible, I'm not good enough. He looks at that, and he knows that that's what's making him better. He learns from it. He uses it to his advantage, and he knows that you have to make mistakes along the way in order to be successful. So again, it's a perceptual change, right? You could look at your mistakes as, man, 9,000 times, what a loser. Nobody would ever say that about Michael Jordan, all right? So when you look at all these sports, Roger Federer and all these guys, they've made way more mistakes than they have good things, and yet we know them because of their successes. So again, it's a matter of attitude. If what you focus on is what's going to happen. So don't get pulled down by your mistakes. Look for a way to learn from it and use it to your advantage, and then grow from that, and then just keep moving forward. Okay? Number 6, nurture your brain and your body. And of course, this is sort of pretty straightforward because we've been talking about the blue zones, all the different areas that they do, nutrition, exercise, sleep, water, all these things. But how you take care of your body, obviously, then will directly impact your mind. So that's pretty common sense. So we'll keep moving on here to number 7. Number 7 is get busy about others. What are we saying there? Volunteering, helping out, doing things for other people, helping other people.